Hi, everyone. Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to this week's author journey. This week is a really good one. They all are, of course, but we have as our guest today Michelle Wamboldt, who was born and raised in Truro, Nova Scotia. She's a graduate of Dalhousie University and the Humber School of Journalism in Toronto. Her debut novel, Birth Road, Vagrant Press and Nimbus Publishing, was released in April of 2022. Her fiction has appeared in the Dalhousie Review and Moose House Publications, say that 3 times fast, Blink and You'll Miss It, Volume 2. Michelle has lived in a small rural community on the beautiful south shore of Nova Scotia for the past 27 years, and she's currently working on her second novel. So let's hear more from Michelle, and I'll bring her up to join me on stage. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
Welcome to the author journey. So nice to have you.
Thank you very much for having me, Anne.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And your book, Birth Road, it has recently been nominated for a very prestigious Nova Scotia award, the Margaret and John Savage First Book Award, Atlantic Book Awards. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How did it feel when you heard that?
I was very surprised and very honored. To be truthful, I just can't even believe I'm in the category of some of these other great writers. So it's been quite exciting.
Well, congratulations. And, you know, it's no surprise because I have my very own signed copy of Birth Road that I think I picked up at Dartmouth Book Exchange, of course.
It's in there.
Yeah, big supporter. We love Sue and Amy there. But there have been some pretty amazing reviews, very rave reviews, and even on the cover, the beautifully written, expertly told, CanLit has found its latest shining star, which Donna Morrissey, who is a very well-known author, best-selling author of The Fortunate Brother, said, and that's on the cover. Like, when you hear some of that feedback, like, do you feel like you're like on the outside looking in and going, oh, is that about my book? Like, how does it feel? Is it?
That's what it feels like. It's kind of surreal. I mean, it's been 2 years now since the book came out, so I'm kind of getting used to it, but truthfully, I don't think I will ever get used to people coming up to me and asking me about my book, telling me they've read it and how much they liked it, and just getting like emails and texts from complete strangers. I'll never get used to it, and it'll always feel the same, which is just amazing. Like,
Special.
I don't think it grows old ever.
Oh my goodness. And I love that you're so humble because when I had read your book when I met you and introduced myself at the Grown-Up Book Fair, the fantastic Grown-Up Book Fair.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I said, I loved your book. And you're like, you did? Like, yes, I did. It was amazing. And there's some just incredible feedback. You know, it's been called compelling and a page turner. Suspenseful, engrossing, meticulously researched. Like, kudos to you. So let's talk a little bit about the subject matter of the book. So when it says meticulously researched, it began based on the story of your grandmother's life, correct?
That's right. So after my grandmother passed away, I started to just write little short stories from memories of things she had told me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the time, I wasn't a fiction writer. I didn't write in my journal. I didn't really write anything except, press releases and news, stuff like that. So
very much like my writing background. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Speeches, nothing really
not scintillating.
Yeah. So anyway, I started to do that. And I never dreamed that I would write a novel. But when I worked at that time for the Federal Public Service, and anyway, they had a huge downsizing, I left and took a package. And I decided I'm going to try to write a book with these little stories. And I figured this is my time. Like, I've just been given this opportunity. And so that is what I did. And my intention was to base it pretty much factually on my grandmother's life. But once I started to write, I realized her life, even though it's pretty hard in this book, in real life, it was even worse. And there were just certain subjects I knew I wouldn't be able to write about and to make believable because I couldn't even believe them. And so as I wrote, I just started to change things a little, and then new characters just came out of the woodwork, and I just started to follow them, and the story just came. And so it is fiction, but she is still like a thread throughout the pages.
Right.
And it's many of the things in the book are based on her life and really did happen to her. But in the end, I had to call it fiction.
I just love it. And it's basically, fiction based on, a real life person. So almost narrative nonfiction, but, sort of more eking into the fiction world. And I love it when you say that these characters just started appearing to me. Like, what is your process like? Like, how does the development happen in a plot line for you?
Well, with this book, I knew that I wanted it to be these short, like the chapters are very short, and that's how I wanted it, because I wanted each chapter was a memory that she was having. So I wanted them to be standalone. So in that process, I would know what was going to happen kind of as they went along. But when I started to write, then this new little girl popped up, her best friend, Madge. And
I love it.
Oh, who's this? So I just went with her, and then she started to have a family that had kind of a secretive background as well. And many of the characters are named after relatives, but weren't relatives that really existed. And so I just kind of pull from all the stories you have in your childhood and all the people you've met. It's like you just stir it around and pull out the puzzle pieces that you want to fit in.
I love that. And, I always say real life is stranger names, right?
Yes.
So are you like an avid reader? What's your favorite genre to read?
I am an avid reader, yes. And literary fiction, I would say mostly. I do like historical fiction as well. Mainly literary. Yeah.
I would love to tell me about this cover. How gorgeous is that?
I know. I was so happy with the cover. And the funny thing is, I'm a painter as well. So I had designed a few different covers, and I was pretty confident I knew exactly what I wanted. And I had told Nimbus, okay, here's my versions. And they're like, oh, And I had one with my grandmother's photo on it and her picture. And I really wanted that one. And they kept showing me ones, and I was like, I didn't like them. And they're so supportive. They were like, in the end, if you want that, we will go with it. But let us show you one more. And then they showed me the shoes. And I was like, okay, we'll go with that one. I loved it as soon as I saw it.
And it's just really, it's very eye-catching. It says so much with such simplicity, which is really cool. So why don't we have you read a little excerpt from the book, a couple of sections, please. Yay. I want to say hi to those who are watching, and make sure that you pop your comments and thoughts or questions while Michelle is reading, and we'll get back to that in a minute. So take it away.
Okay. I'm going to start at the very beginning of the book. And at the beginning, there's a small poem that speaks to Truro and all small places in the world, really, where this takes place. This was a small place where the wind carried whispers like snowflakes, and all heads turned eagerly to catch them on their tongues. Prologue. My mother was not one to dwell on the past. Digging up old memories is like eating cherries, she said. Some people choose the sweet ones every time, and then there are the others, those who always choose the sour. She said either way, you were left with a slimy pit in the palm of your hand, the ghost, she called it. No good can come from that. I don't agree with my mother. I've always liked the sweet and the sour. You really can't appreciate one without the other. Memories are like that too. Sometimes they're all you have, so you take what you can. When I close my eyes, I can take myself back to that road. I feel the hot sun on my back. I smell the wild roses. I taste the rose dust on my tongue, and I hear the children playing in the fields. I see every building I pass and every person who looks my way, and I ache with the child in my belly, ready to be born. That road holds all the ghosts of my life. On every corner, in every building, under every tree and down every lane, I see them watching me and judging the past. All those I loved and all those I did not. They want to relive it, stir it up again, and see how it will all settle back down, like a child's snow globe. These memories are the map of my life, each triggered by their own essence, each found on the road I walked over 60 years ago when my baby came and saved my life. So I'll just do chapter 1, it's a short chapter. It's called Thunderstorms, Summer 1946. The full force of heaven rained down on us that night. Each rattling crack of thunder was followed by a brief light that held such shocking intensity, I could not help but think of my father. When storms shook our tiny cabin in the woods, he held me close and told me not to worry. It was only God clearing his head for tomorrow. Good things are coming, he said. God is getting ready for a special day. And it was a special day, the day I walked that road. The best memory I have is the day she was born. Mrs. Johnson told me the week before that I was close. You've dropped, Helen, and it won't be long now. She was excited at the prospect of having a baby in her house once again, and all the joy she knew came with a little one. At that point, I was so naive and scared, I did not know what to expect, but I was determined to face it with courage. I had no desire to involve my mother in the birth of my child. She would not understand or accept my decisions. There was no use trying to explain. All I knew was that I needed to be away from the familiar and start living a new life, a life of my own. Mrs. Johnson was more than happy to rent me a room when I arrived at her door 6 months earlier, soaking wet, trembling, and unable to speak. A lost soul is what she called me that day. And I think she may have been right. But time had done its work, and I felt like a new person. Two people, really. Myself and the little one growing inside me. Hope had not been something I was taught as a child, but it was something I now clung to. At dawn that summer's day, I quietly gathered my bag and crept down the stairs. The weathered floorboards on the old porch were still damp, and I paused to look at the long road ahead. Steam rose from the dirt, erasing last night's storm. The fields surrounding the house were lush and green, and the morning dew clung to each blade of grass like stubborn tears. I wore the only coat I had to cover my large stomach. It was not meant for summer, and I knew the coming heat would be unbearable, but it was my only choice. My suitcase weighed me down as I struggled to walk, to keep breathing through the pains that gripped my belly and traveled down my back. I had 7 miles to go. Lingering storm clouds kept the light at bay as I approached the end of Mrs. Johnson's lane. Before turning onto the main road, I stopped under the oak trees. I closed my eyes and listened. I could make out the robins, warblers, the thrush, as they brought in the new day. I had never heard birds so clearly. Their high-pitched calls and low twittering melodies mingled together to create an air of exciting anticipation. I opened my eyes to search for the morning choir just as the sun started to peek through the clouds. The light was streaming through the outstretched branches, cascading toward the earth. I smiled, remembering the magical shafts of light from my childhood in the woods. Then we lead into When Helen is 5, in 1921.
I love that. You obviously have a very clever turn of phrase. And what I like about you leaving the reading at that is that the next scene is in the cabin in the woods.
Yes.
Is that a place that you have been in your life?
No.
Okay.
But my grandmother did grow up in a logging camp.
Mm-hmm.
And the first story that I ever wrote, the first little short story after she passed away, was in the book. It's the scene at Christmas when she gets the doll for Christmas. And that was based on a story she told me.
Mm.
So I had the vision of that camp in my mind.
Really in your mind. And so you were close to your grandmother growing up, were you?
very close. Yeah, she lived in Truro where I did, and I would have seen her
regularly.
several times a week.
Yeah, both my grandmothers were here in Halifax and grew up and spent a lot of time with them. So I love the idea that all those stories just kind of percolated and have wound up in this delightful book. I wanted to share with folks who are watching this gorgeous map. For anybody who's in Nova Scotia and is familiar with Truro. This is really, really fun to trace the streets and look at the buildings.
Yes, and those sketches are so accurate to the buildings that are still there right now.
I love it. So I was going to say, what's the same and what's different?
Well, most of the buildings are still there. Like Stanfield's looks exactly the same in the map.
Mm-hmm.
What was the post office is now the police station. It's still there. Even the little houses where Edgar grew up. I went and found the houses. I drove down the street and took pictures and gave them to my friend Kim Dana, who drew this map. She's an amazing artist.
I love this.
And so all these are based on actual photos mainly that I had given her. And the reasoning behind the map, it wasn't something that we were going to include originally. We were well into my editing, and I went to Nimbus and said, I think it would be lovely to have a map at the beginning of this book. And I said, I also have the artist to do it.
In mind.
Yeah. So they were like, sure. And as I told you earlier, while I was writing this book, on my wall, I had a big whiteboard, and I'm very visual, so my process is to look, and I had a map drawn out of all the key moments I knew about that I wanted to write about. So I would have a picture that I drew of like Stanfield's Mill, the courthouse, the police station, the logging camp, and so I had that all outlined.
Wow.
And that's kind of what made me think we should put a map in there.
That's fantastic. So we did also talk a little earlier before we started about your writing process. And that you don't really have one to speak of, but talk a little bit about. And I love hearing that. And I always say to people, there's nothing right or wrong. I can give you a little advice. We can talk about, the way, individual authors can talk about the way they do it. And I had shared with you, like I have a little note on my desk that is a scene that I need to figure out where to put it in the book I'm working on. So I've got these little notes all over my desk. So talk a little bit about how you pull that all together and what's behind you on the wall there.
Yeah. So as I did with Birth Road, I'm now working on a second novel. I have been for a while, but I'm the kind of writer who will just like walk away for 6 months, not do anything. I'm the worst example possible. Anyway, on the wall over here is my kind of board for my current project, and like I like to list out my timeline, especially with historical fiction. I find I really need to keep everything in line. I need to keep the characters, their ages, what's happening when, and kind of the key themes that I want to bring in. So that's what's on the wall here. And other than that, I think one of my main things that I enjoy is my research. Yeah, so I did the same with Birth Road and with the book I'm working on now. I interview people, I do a lot of research, read books, and I find through the interviews that leads to a lot of my content.
What great
like
ideas.
It might have been something I never thought about, but it's so interesting. I'm like, oh, I could use that. And I could really And that happened with Birth Road too.
Is your next novel, is it historical fiction as well?
It is, yes.
Okay.
And it's set here where I live.
Nice. And on the South Shore.
Yeah.
Oh, that's excellent. And you mentioned earlier about like just characters that all of a sudden walk into the scene that you really hadn't planned. So I was working on a scene yesterday. The same thing kind of happened. And I had in my mind that two women were going to run into each other. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Ooh, this is going to add to the mystery. If this other third person is also in this scene, but we don't know why, right? So everything is just going on. I'm like, oh, she's going to come into this scene, and that's going to just create a whole new.
Yeah, and I can see them. It's like a movie in your head.
Yep. Yep.
In Birth Road, I have a teacher. He's a man, but I named him after one of my high school teachers, Mrs. McDade. So he was Mr. McDade. And someone's like, well, why didn't you just make him a woman? I said, because he wasn't a woman.
Right.
He was a man.
Exactly. So when you talk about those timelines that you see on the wall and all of those index cards, there's a tool that you use, you had mentioned earlier, called Scrivener.
Yes.
And it's something that I have attempted to use, but just doesn't work for me. So I've tried it and I just get too distracted. But talk a little bit about how it has helped you sort of organize your thoughts, because depending on how you approach your writing, it can be a very, very helpful tool.
Yes. And I think for the way I think, which is very visually, it was a total game changer. Like I had been writing this book for a very long time, and but I only had kind of 2 periods where I sat down for 6-month periods and wrote, and the other time I just thought about it and went about life. But towards the second period of the 6 months, I was out for coffee with another writer, Renee Hartley, and she actually told me about Scrivener. I'd never even heard of it. Mm-hmm. And so I came home and tried it, and it just was a total game changer because of the way it's laid out, because I could visually see all my chapters on a page on note cards, and I could move them around and shuffle them. And on the side, I could have all the notes. And when I thought, oh, I have to remember to put a little hint in about this so people will know why this happened, you could just put your notes down the side. So I don't know. It's the piece of advice I give anybody.
This is
all those notes. And I kind of start out that way. So I'll have a folder of all these notes, and then I'll transfer them into Scrivener.
Okay.
And then I don't have to keep flipping through those notes anymore. I've got them all right there to look at. And I'm by no ways a computer or technical person. I'm the worst ever.
I actually surprised myself because I love learning new programs, and especially if they're going to help me be more efficient in my work. I love learning, about little editing software. But I found I went down way too many rabbit holes. Okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would be, and there's places that you can save your research links. It is, in theory, it should have been the perfect thing for me. But I just I have just organized that in little stickies on my desk, or I transfer them into files on my computer. And then I bring them up in my character charts and things like that. And if it was all in one place, maybe, but I just feel that anyway, I'm really.
The same as the process.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the storyline with your new novel, or do you want to keep that secret for now?
I think I'll keep that secret.
Okay. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, is the best place on your website? Let's bring your website up here.
Yes. Most people get to me through my website. Or also on Instagram. A lot of people contact me through Instagram as well.
Okay. And so if you just click on the Instagram icon, takes you right to. Okay. If you lean forward a little bit, we're not hearing you very well.
It should. If you just click that, it should take you right to the Instagram.
Okay. And then we also, your book is available pretty much anywhere that books are sold. Yes. Bookstores locally, internationally, online. And there it is right there. A bold and evocative work of historical fiction by a debut author that travels from rural Nova Scotia to Boston and back again. I love this. It's just wonderful. What did your family think? Like, what was their reaction when they read it?
Because this was the first thing I've really written, and I really didn't share it with anybody. My mother read a couple chapters, and my husband read a couple of chapters. They didn't even get to read it until after it was accepted by Nimbus. But my mother, who is Colleen, she's the baby in the Birth Road, was thrilled. And we've had the best time over the last 2 years. She's been by my side going to all of my events. We went on a big tour all through Truro and around Cape Breton. I've done so many readings and book clubs and all kinds of things. And she's with me all the time. So it's been really, really fun. And I'll be bringing
I love
her on June 3rd to the book awards. I'll be bringing her with me as well.
Of course. Oh, she'll be your date. I love that. My mom was always my biggest fan. She was also at all my book signings. She was always my first beta reader. I would print out a whole manuscript and bind it for her. And she recently passed, 99 years old. God rest her soul. So that really warms my heart to know that she's so pleased.
Oh, yes. She's like my number one salesperson too.
Oh, I love it.
Tells everyone she sees.
Oh, I love it. And I mean, did she tell stories about growing up with Helen?
She did. And when I was writing the book, you know, I sat with her and she told me a lot. Like her father, Edgar, she did not really know him. So she didn't have a lot of information on him at all.
Okay.
And so, you know, we told so many stories. By the end, we were like, is this part real or was this part real?
You're right. Which one is reality? So he was at the logging camps a lot, was he? Was that why she didn't? Right.
He was Helen's husband.
Right.
Yeah. So he was the one who went off with the North Novas.
I'm sorry. Say that again. Lean forward a little.
Edgar was Helen's husband who went off to the World War II in the North Novas.
Okay.
And that was another thing about my research. I didn't think that Stanfields would be that much of a major part of the book, or that the North Novas would. But after researching and going to Stanfields, it's such a great visual place. I could just picture so many things. And I interviewed people and they told me so many great stories. So yeah, that led to a lot of the plot line as well.
That's awesome. And when are they making when are the awards? June
3rd.
June 3rd. And Sue Slade wants to know, how close are you to finishing your next novel?
Sue. Well, my deadline is a moving deadline, so I'm not that close, but hopefully not too far away.
Stay tuned, right?
Stay tuned.
And she has her tickets for June 3rd. I love that. And somebody said they love Karen. Oh, hi, Karen. Karen Dean's watching. Nice to see you. She said she loves Scrivener. You know, maybe I'll give it another try because, you know, it really is.
I mean, I only do probably 1/10 of what it can actually do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow.
I think it's worth a try.
Well, I will give it another try. I will. So have you got any other little words of advice or tidbits for authors who are out there watching? Or
my main piece of advice would be, if you've got something, send it to a publisher. And I really I never wrote mine with the intention of publishing it. And it was a friend who, like, you know, really pushed me and said, you should send it. And I did. And right away, it was accepted. So
that's
you
awesome.
Just never know. I would send in whatever you have.
And you know what? You make a really good point. Like, there's a lot of time and energy and sweat and tears that goes into writing a full-length novel.
Yeah.
So, like, why wouldn't you, right?
Exactly. It's a major, like, somebody the other day told me they just wrote their second book. And I'm like, that is a major accomplishment. Like, I don't think people who aren't fellow writers just don't really realize it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yeah. So I'm working on my third novel, my fourth book, and it's been a while since I started my company. I haven't been writing my own stuff. So I just thought, okay, let's just protect some time and do it. And just like, okay, I forgot just how hard this is.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah. I mean, it's wonderful when you're on a roll, right?
Oh, it's the best feeling. Like 5 hours
incredible.
Go by and you're like, oh,
yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. So anyway, life happens and things like kind of.
And you can't be too hard on yourself.
No,
we do this for the enjoyment of putting the words on the page, so they can't be forced, really.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for sharing your excerpt. And I'm going to pop up your website again. So If anybody wants to find Michelle, visit her at michellewamboldt.com. And Birth Road is available at all of your favorite bookshops and online from your favorite retailers. And the publisher is Vagrant Press Nimbus. And we just really congratulate you on your nomination and wish you the best of luck. It'll be fun. All right. And take care. And happy writing. And we'll see you soon.
Okay, great. Have a great day.
You too. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on the author journey today. We'll see you again next week with another very special guest. So hope you're able to join us as we learn about people's author journeys and about the publishing industry in general. So for now, I'm Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and I wish you a happy day and happy reading. Bye for now.